So, another installment of Canada. You ready for this one?
I am. I like this city not as much as Montreal.
Oh, okay.
I threw you for a loop, didn't I?
You did. Yeah. I thought you were really feeling it when we were in Quebec City. Quebec, by the way, I think is how they say it. Not Quebec. I think it's Quebec.
Are you bringing the French today?
I am. Bienvenue. Let's get cracking on this episode of Skip Town.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey listeners, ever wonder what it would be like to blow up your comfort zone at the tender age of 50? Well, we did just that. When our last kid went off to college, we hit the road in search of a new hometown. Now we bounce from city to city and bring you along for the ride. This is the Skip Town All-Stars podcast.
What's up, All-Stars? Welcome back to another episode of Skip Town. We are coming to you from the Podcast Doctor Studios in Orlando, Florida. We have a special friend with us today. He's not a special friend. He's a friend who is beyond special. He's helping us produce this episode. His name is Philip Bird. You may be hearing him occasionally in this episode. He will be the voice of God. Say hi, Phil.
What's up, everybody?
That's it. That's what God sounds like. So we are off on that today. We are talking about bienvenue. It's not bienvenue. It's bienvenue. It's bienvenue. I found out, as we discovered in the Montreal episode, when you're going to French Canada.
A French Canada. That was a good one.
That was a good one. We are going to recap today our episode of Tell the Kids.
Quebec City.
That's right. Stop number 2 on our Canadian vacation with our friend Patrick. If you were listening in the last episode in Montreal, we piggybacked on his R&R and totally disrupted his flow.
Oh, we did.
Because that's what we do.
Yeah, we hijacked his vacation. And then we made him pick the lodging. And then we told him to pick the restaurants and and all the things to do. Yeah, we hijacked it 100%.
Yeah, and a future Easter egg is we forced him to stay in Lake Placid with us on the way back. So that'll be a future episode that I can't wait to recap. It'll be a fun one.
Yeah, Patrick was thinking he was going to be back home all cozy in his apartment. And no, he was in Lake Placid with us.
Yeah.
But right now we are talking about Quebec City. So let's have at it.
Let's have at it. So for us, I was working in the middle of Patrick's vacation. Even though it was his vacation, I was working. So cut to Patrick climbing into the Subaru with us. And I've got gear on top of my car for a job that required me to carry my own. It required me to carry an iMac everywhere I went. And I won't say what show it is, Married at First Sight, season 17. But they required me to have an iMac, and so we had the cage on top of the car.
Let's just cut to the chase. It was a total pain to carry all this stuff. Okay?
It was.
We couldn't even fit Patrick's little suitcase in the back because of all your stuff. Stuff.
I know. It was my stuff.
But we got him in the Subaru, and we drove from northern New York, so upstate New York, to Montreal, and then from Montreal to Quebec City.
That's right.
How long was the drive from Montreal to Quebec City? Tell everyone, because you were doing the drive.
I think it was like 3 hours, 4 maybe, something like that.
Okay, here's a word to the wise. When you are in a Subaru Outback, make sure the cabin isn't so loud. So do a road test on the freeway over 65 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Because as a passenger in the back seat and him and Patrick in the front seat, I could not hear a single conversation. At one point, you said to me, "Right, Denise?" And I said, "I have no idea what you're saying because this cabin is so loud."
It's true. You were sleeping most of the way because you couldn't follow the conversation anyway.
It was like white noise with a baby. You know how like a mom will turn on a vacuum cleaner and the baby will fall asleep? Yeah, that cabin noise was like white noise. I was out. So it was what was it, 2.5 hour drive, did you say?
I think it was about 3, maybe a little over.
Yeah. So we left Montreal at relatively like 10 o'clock or something like that and got into Quebec City at 2.
Yeah, and you had a nice nap along the way. Suffice it to say, Denise is really experiencing some buyer's remorse over the Subaru Outback.
I really don't like it. I don't. The cabin's way too loud. There's not enough compartments inside the car for like all my little stuff. I think of it as a traveler's car, right? That's the whole purpose. They advertise it's for the hiker in you. Well, okay, don't have Don't bring a lot of little things because there are no compartments in the car. And don't
I
plan.
know, but you had that problem with our last few cars. You had that problem with my BMW when I had one.
Okay, that car was a joke.
What?
Okay, the
The
plastic,
goose? The goose. You're calling the goose a joke.
Okay, this is a car that retails for about $60,000. Now, he did not pay that because he got it used. It was an i5. Whatever, not an i5. Sorry.
That's my car buying tactic.
No, it was like
I wait for 3 years until they return it, and then I buy it.
So it was not an i5. It was like the 500 series, whatever the heck that is.
Yeah, it was a 525.
It had a push button. A $60,000 car had a push button for the cup holder that was plastic and cheap plastic. So
You don't buy a BMW to sip coffee.
that is true. Okay, I did. It is made to drive. So
That car had
is,
stones.
Okay, it did. So that is true.
Which is why I loved it.
It was a great car to drive. I just had no place to put my lipstick.
You just
No place to put my lipstick. And God forbid I had a cup that I needed to put somewhere if that button was sticking. No,
Right.
I did not like that car.
So, and you like
Did you ever
this-
hear somebody say they didn't like a BMW?
No,
I know.
not
I am
really.
the first person.
I've never heard a BMW owner say, unless they upgraded to, a Rolls or a Mercedes of some sort, but that's it.
Yeah, it was a good car to drive, but no amenities. And I feel like the Subaru Outback is the same, and the cabin is very loud. So on 3 hours, white noise, I'm out.
So when we rolled up to
I was
Quebec
well-
City, Denise was already surly.
I was well rested.
You were, but angry. She had nowhere to put her lipstick, and she couldn't hear a single thing we said. So, okay, so we get to Quebec City,
Yeah.
and we had a little time to kill before we checked into the place that we were going to stay,
Yeah.
which was an amazing apartment, but there was a lag of a few hours. We went to find a restaurant, and we basically went to, I want to say it's St. Joseph Street, something like that. It's right in the St. Roch,
Yes.
if you're French, St. Roch, or St. Roch area if you're from America like we are. And so we were staying right in this area. It was kind of like a hub, supposedly trendy, supposedly on the upswing. But what did we find there when we got out of the car?
A lot of homeless.
Yeah.
Lots of homeless. Yeah. So if you look up St. Roch, you'll see that most articles written about it describe it as a revitalized area with galleries and coffee shops and all of that. So basically, it was a working class neighborhood that now people are getting pushed out. And you can tell that people are getting pushed out because in most areas where it was working class and people get pushed out, you see it around you with the homeless. That is a trend, certainly in America. And now we did see that for ourselves in Quebec City. So the area is very pretty. Cobblestone streets, yes, coffee shops, little restaurants, very walkable.
Yeah.
The street you're describing, I believe, is the street that is more set up like your local promenade. So whatever that would be in your area that no cars are able to drive on, that's this street, but cars are able to drive on it. But it has all of those amenities, really cute little stores, locally owned. No, I didn't see any chain restaurants or clothing stores or anything like that.
I think there were one or two, but nothing to write home about.
The area is known for its Catholic church. It's the St. Roch Catholic Church. It's been there for ages. And the whole history of that church is that the neighborhood is built around it. It was always a community center.
Okay.
For many years, the basement served as a shelter for homeless people, also as a food center for homeless people to come in and get food. But when we were there, it looked like it was closed. Now, I left and I had to Google it because there was graffiti all over the doorways of the church. And it's a beautiful, Gothic Catholic church. And the doors are 3 of them. Gorgeous graffiti all over. And then
it looked a little post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, Mad Max.
Yeah.
That is
a little
it.
bit.
There was graffiti on the stairs, graffiti on the banisters. In fact, if you check out our YouTube and look at one of the shorts, I have a video that says, "Where are we?" with a question mark, or "Can you guess where we are?" And there's a concert being held in the evening on the steps of the church.
It was really cool.
With the graffiti as a backdrop, kind of crazy cool. Like you would think it was something out of a high and video production when it was just a local band playing at night. It was it was interesting. And then the homeless people that sleep on those stairs had to be relocated for the evening.
They did. There were a lot of people just frequenting their night
With
space.
holding their sleeping bag, like waiting for the concert to be over. I was like, I wish that there was something. I hate to see that. I talk about it all the time. Like, totally. I hate to see that.
Totally. Okay, so let's, before we get too deep into that, let's talk about why Quebec City.
Yeah.
Quebec City. And it is the capital of that province. It is not the largest city in that province, Montreal is, but it is the oldest one. I believe it's the oldest city in Canada.
I believe it because there's no subways. You know that, right? There are no subways.
There are no subways. And in 1608, it was discovered by a guy named Jacques Cartier.
Oh, look at you.
Jack Carter. Jack Carter. And
also known as Jack Carter.
Yeah. And later on, Samuel de Champlain, I'm like slurring my words trying to get it out of my mouth right now, established the first fort there. It was around 1608. So the city's over 400 years old.
And you know it when you land there. Yeah. Basically, land there figuratively out of your car or, legitimately land in a plane, you can see it all around you. The history of that city, it's everywhere.
It is. So where we were staying, we had to actually go up the hill toward the old fortress, which is basically the upper city or the old city. And you could see all the ramparts. You can actually walk it if you want. You're going to be getting your steps in. I mean, it's a sludge getting up that hill.
Patrick and I walked it from the ramparts.
You came down, though.
Okay, we did.
You didn't go up.
Okay, we didn't technically.
Okay.
It's still 75,000 steps, okay?
Okay.
However you, up or down, it's 75,000 steps, okay?
I just feel like down might be easier. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, it is a tad bit easier. It's still a long walk.
It was a long walk.
And to go back to, there is not a subway, but do you know what their major form of transportation is?
Cars, I guess. I don't know.
Walking.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. Wow. So if you want to go to the upper city, you don't have to walk, but many people do.
Yes, they have buses.
Okay.
But wherever you look, everyone is walking. And things to do in Quebec City, walk. That's what every tourist website says. Walk. It's a walkable city. Yeah.
Okay, so we were staying in the St. Roch area, which is kind of like your Santa Monica 3rd Street Promenade. It was a little touristy, but there are many, many locals there as well. Why don't you paint the picture, though, if you go up the hill, what the upper city is like?
It's beautiful. It's something out. I say this when I really come across a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Something out of a magazine. It's something out of a storybook. You feel like you are swept away to a European town. Yeah. There's no other way to really describe it.
It feels very much like rural France, naturally. Yeah. I mean, it's French-Canadian all the way.
It does, yes. It really does.
Some of the towns that we visited in France when we were there way back when, Tours, places like that.
Now, Montreal felt like Paris, very metropolitan. Quebec City did not feel that way.
No.
Quebec City felt like more homey. That's really the only way I could describe it.
It was more of a hamlet. The shops were older.
Yes.
The buildings in the upper city are way older.
Yes.
So the Citadel is up there, which is the actual fortress. Once you walk up all the ramparts and get to that part of the city, the Citadel was modernized like in the 1800s or something like that. And I guess that's the current state of it now. So that whole region, though, that whole area is, it's like a little French village in the mountains somewhere.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. We didn't do a tour in Quebec City.
No.
Normally when we go to cities, if you're following us and you're subscribing and you're hitting that follow button on Spotify.
Which we hope you're doing. Which you should be doing by now.
Yes. You'll know that we generally will get a tour guide in most of the cities we go to because we want to know the history of that city.
Yeah.
Quebec City, we did not do that. Our stay was not as long as I had hoped it would be, just because we spent more time in Montreal. So we just hit it hard ourselves. But nonetheless, if you're going to go to Quebec City, I would suggest a tour. There's so much history there, and you and I definitely could have benefited from doing one.
Sure.
But what we did instead was we just
Yeah, we
scoped
just
it.
ate and drank.
Yeah,
That's what
pretty
we
much,
did.
pretty much. And the first place that we went to was the Fairmont. I have to actually look at my notes because I'm going to butcher it.
Yeah.
But it is the Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac. That was a recommendation from Cousin Judy. So you should definitely check out that episode with Cousin Judy, who is our
cruise episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She is our trusted travel guru. And when I told her we were traveling to Quebec City, she said, you have to go to this hotel. It is one of the oldest hotels in all of Quebec.
Yeah.
It could very well be the oldest hotel, but it is beautiful. And
It is.
we had breakfast there one morning. We actually took an Uber there. And then we
Because
also...
we did not walk up the hill.
We did not walk up the hill. And then we also had, we had drinks there. Patrick and I had drinks and appetizers one night, which I also have been sharing on my Instagram while we were there. And I just made a YouTube short about it. So if you want to check that out as well, you'll see some inside footage of the Fairmont. It was really, it's quite spectacular. It's one of those places you have to visit if you're in Quebec City.
You don't have to convince me. I mean, it was nice that it was one of the oldest places and one of the nicest places. It's the most photographed hotel in the world, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know
Did
that.
you know that?
I
Yeah.
did not. I believe it.
I found that out. But anybody who listened to our Egypt episode knows that I'm brand loyal when it comes to the Fairmont. I'm a huge fan of the Fairmont hotels.
Look at you. Oh,
Huge
are you?
fan, yeah. Until we get a sponsor. And then we get a hotel sponsor, then I'll be a huge fan of the Radisson or wherever. I don't know. Do they even have those anymore? Those are discontinued, aren't they?
I think you dated yourself.
I
my
think I
friend.
did.
Yeah.
I totally Gen X'd that one. Oh my God. Fairmont. Definitely check out the Fairmont if there's one in the town, wherever you're going.
I did find while I was traveling up through the older part, so old Quebec City is what they call the upper part. I did find the language to be difficult. I thought Montreal was bad. I was so nervous when I was in Quebec City that even though I was told to say hello to every shopkeeper, I was so nervous they were going to start a conversation with me because all I knew was bonjour.
Yeah.
Yeah, and au revoir.
Some of them did, but it turns out
it.
some of them did, but it turns out they were actually English speakers. A lot of people would quickly make the transition. I think a lot of people knew we were American. There was one store I walked into.
What
For
were
the
you
most
wearing?
part-
Okay, what were you wearing? Because that's the only way they know.
Who asked that question?
Yeah, because
I was looking super fly that day.
Okay.
Why is that even in the thing?
okay, nobody uses Superfly anymore. That is so 1991.
I walked into a store, and most people, when you walk into the store and you say "Bonvenue," like I am prone to do, look at you funny. But I actually said "Bonjour," and most people would say, "Oh, bonjour" back or what have you, and just let me go about looking about the store. There was one store I walked into, I'll be honest, where I walked in and I said "Bonjour" to the first person, and he begrudgingly said "Bonjour" to me. And it was a men's clothing store. And I realized after looking at 2 or 3 racks, it's a skinny man store.
Oh, yeah, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You got to go.
So I think what he was trying to subtly tell me was
This is not for you.
the place for you is down the street. DXL or whatever it is down the street. Men's Warehouse XL is down the street for you, bro. So that was the only place where I got sort of a chilly reception. But we met a couple people that, we bought like $1,000 worth of maple syrup from that one couple.
Okay, they did speak English. That is true. But in every store, I was very nervous. In fact, English as a second language was truly such a second language that when I was waiting for my Uber to arrive, there was a woman. Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a woman who was on her phone. She was trying to, I actually don't know what she was trying to do. Okay. I really don't know. She was trying to get something, whether it was an Uber or a cab, but she didn't have the Uber app. I'm like, well, what are you hailing? So then she said to me, can you help me? So my Uber came and I'm asking him if he could take her after me. And, Uber drivers don't do that. First of all, he knew no English. And if he did know English, he was teaching me a lesson that I should know French. Yeah. And it was a lesson well learned because then he pulled out Google Translate, like, here, you should be doing, he was not happy.
Save me some time.
Yeah. And so he pulled out Google Translate. We figured it out with Google Translate that he was willing to take me to my location. He would take her to hers. She was so grateful. So we're in the car and we're chatting, and she asks me where I'm from, and I tell her I'm from?
Nowhere. You're from nowhere now.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm from nowhere. And so I asked her where she's from, and she tells me Alberta. So we're talking, and
she's from Alberta?
She was from
Canada?
Alberta. Yeah, she was from Alberta.
And she just unexpectedly ran into French people in Quebec? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, and she knew no French. She knew no French.
Okay, so that's understandable, but she should have expected I'm going to encounter French-speaking people.
I have no idea. It's like
she's a Canadian. It's her fellow countrymen.
Maybe she doesn't leave the house much.
Guess not. Okay, go on.
So we're in the car, and I don't even know how it came up. She said something about, I don't know what she said, but what I blurted out was that our politicians are crazy. That's what I said.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, what are you? And she started laughing. She goes, huh. Like that, right? And so then I said, what are you, you're visiting? She told me she's from Alberta. And I said, oh, are you here to see family? She goes, no, I'm here for a convention. And I said, oh, what convention? Because I'm heading over to the convention center right now. And I said, oh, what convention? And she's like, oh, the Conservatives for Canada.
Oh, nice.
Uh-huh. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So my crazy politician comment went over like a lead balloon.
Well, okay. But in fairness to you, the Conservative Party in Canada could not be in the Republican Party in the United States because they're not extreme enough.
Are they still moderate?
They're so moderate.
Okay.
Yeah, they're basically like our Democrats.
Well, she did respond with, everyone has a different definition of crazy. And then I responded with, well, you haven't lived in the States.
Yeah.
so then I found out she was with the Conservative Party of Canada. And I was like, oh, I should just stop. I'm like,
that's right.
No good deed goes unpunished. I got that woman a ride, and I was sitting next to her,
and then you called her politicians crazy.
I did.
Way to go,
did.
hon.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had a sort of a same experience with an Uber driver. You remember we were sitting having food at the restaurant, and the food was taking a little bit, and I quickly realized, oh gosh, I have this meeting at work. So I had to catch an Uber and leave you and Patrick behind at the restaurant. And when the Uber app pulled up my location, it was like 2 blocks away. And I decided, I'm going to be smart and I'm going to change the location to where I really am. Not remembering that we were on a walking promenade and there's no way he could get his car in front of the restaurant because it's all closed off.
No, I think though what I thought was that promenade was just a one way. I think that's what it was, because those promenade had cars going down them.
In spots, but not where we were.
Oh, okay.
And so he was, yelling at me in French, basically through the Uber app.
Idiot.
You can't go there. I can't go there. Come around. So then I had to send him a picture of the sign where I was standing and everything. And so I get in the car and I could tell he's perturbed with me, right? And his name was Guy or Guy, I think you say it in French. And so I go, Guy, and I'm super excited to see him. And he gave me a really icy reception. And I sat down and he took me to where I was going. Cut to 2 nights later, Patrick and I, it was the one night where I could actually go out all night and hang out with Patrick and have fun. No work, no nothing. Patrick and I go to an Irish pub way up near the fortress and all this other stuff.
Really, an Irish pub in Quebec City? Seriously?
It was the only thing that was open at that hour. So that's where we went. We got drinks there. So we go to catch an Uber to come back. And guess who our driver was?
Was it Guy?
It was Guy. And so I screamed, I see him come up on my Uber and I'm like, and I'm so excited. When Patrick and I got in the car,
Was he excited to see you? Was Guy excited to see you?
But I gave him the same greeting and he gave me the same greeting. I said, Guy. And he's like, get in. I did tip him well for chasing me around the promenade that one day. So he knew he was going to get tipped at least.
Okay.
So that part was good. But anyway, the Uber drivers, that is a good travel tip. Your restaurateur or your waitress or somebody may speak English in Quebec City. Your Uber driver almost definitely will not. So get out that Google Translate. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you remembered that.
Yeah.
That made me think of Guy. I'm happy now.
I'm sure Guy's doing just fine.
Guy's doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the one that has a problem.
Uh-huh.
Okay, moving on.
So I did find that Quebec City, we did not have a good food run. I found that the food was just meh. How did you feel?
Oh, I think I had a couple good meals there.
Did you? Okay, I did find, so there was this, I don't know. I was in Quebec City, so I'm looking for beef bourguignon. I've got the whole Paris thing going. It's hot as can be. It's 95 degrees.
You want French onion soup?
And I want French onion soup and beef bourguignon. So
my
I'm
God.
searching everywhere for beef bourguignon. One restaurant. And it's in a part of town that's like, I think it was north of our apartment, walking distance. I took an Uber, had Patrick meet me over there. It was really good. It was so good that the next day I went back for brunch because I was so scared of trying something different.
Oh my gosh, that's very not Skip Town of
It
you.
is so not Skip Town, but I had had such bad meals in Montreal. I was like, I'm not going to risk this one.
That's
I
true.
landed-
we did have a bad run if you
I
listened
landed
to the Montreal
Yeah,
episode.
I landed
Oh
a
my God.
5-star. This guy knew no English, but I could point to the menu. And I even took a picture of the menu and I posted it on my story on Instagram. And I said, what to order when everything is in French. The menu was in French. And so, of course, I started getting all these DMs from people who knew the language and was like, oh, get this, get that. But I knew how to spell beef bourguignon, so I could point. So I pointed.
Okay.
And then again, the next day went back for brunch. Do you remember I brought you all that food from brunch?
Yeah, it was delicious.
Yeah. So what had happened was I went to the same restaurant the next day and I had brunch with Patrick and James had to work. So I wanted to bring him back some food. So the chef was also the maitre d' and he was the waiter. He was also the waiter. He did everything. I asked him if I could take brunch to go. It is a big no-no to ask a very good restaurant to take food to go. Because their whole thought, I mean, I'm guessing, because he started arguing. I could tell he was arguing with the owner because the owner, I think, was saying.
Yeah, he's like, this isn't Pizza Hut.
Yes, exactly. The owner is saying, let her take whatever she wants. Because I said, oh, my husband, I did the Google Translate. I said, I did the phone, like my husband's at the hotel.
You praised them for the food.
Yes,
to try and con them into sending some home for me.
Yeah, I'll pay for
which
the
I
brunch.
appreciate.
And I did. I paid for another brunch. And I said, let me just take to go. The owner is saying yes, yes, yes. And the chef he did the whole hands up in the air thing. Yeah, he did the whole hand. Like I'm not McDonald's. I'm not
Right.
Pizza Hut. Reluctantly put it in all the things, all the containers that they had to get for me. How was it?
It was delicious.
Do you know how much attitude
really
I got
good.
for that?
I'm sure you got a lot of attitude. You're dealing with French Canadians.
Was it worth it?
It was, for me, it was worth it. I didn't have to do anything. You brought it home to me. Yeah, it was
but I'm
absolutely
asking,
worth it.
was it okay? So
was
for
good.
me, it was
The
worth
food
it. Yeah.
was really
okay.
good.
So it
Yeah.
was worth me doing it. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tip in Canada, if you're at a good restaurant, well, no, in Quebec City, if you're at a good restaurant, do not ask them to take an order to go. They will look at you side eye and then they'll start talking about you in French and you have no idea what they're saying.
They did give you about 30 odd shaped small containers to get everything home.
He did say to me, they're not a to-go place, so they had to find stuff.
Yeah. Some of it was in Tupperware.
Yeah, some of it was in Tupperware. Yeah.
So, but we actually had another good location that we went. That bar/pizza place, Bira Basta.
Oh, okay. What area was that?
You were there
that
twice.
Was in St.
That was like the
Roch.
last night. We took a photo there, and all, yeah, that was in St. Roch.
Yeah.
And
I
that
had
place
drinks
was
there
good.
one time, and then we did have pizza.
We ate there with Patrick the one night, our last night in town.
That was decent.
That place was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was a vibrant crowd, a lot of fun inside, very robust environment. It was fun. I had a good time there at that place.
Yeah, I did too. It was legit. Drinks were great. I don't know. I just think Italian food in Quebec City might be a little harder to do than French food in Quebec City.
Naturally, yeah.
So
of course.
I was sticking with straight up French food. That was my guess. I wasn't doing Irish pubs. I wasn't scoping out Italian restaurants. But yeah, the pizza was fine. I did find the people of Quebec City to be different than the people of Montreal.
Yeah.
3 hours away, completely different vibe.
Yeah.
No different than Los Angeles to San Diego. 2.5 hours away, completely different vibe,
True.
both cities. So you can probably say that of wherever you are, like Austin to San Antonio, or, what it would be, Chicago to Milwaukee. I have my take on the people of Quebec City. What was yours when we arrived?
It felt like kind of a tough environment. I was expecting, when we first arrived and we saw as many homeless people walking around as we did, we were legit. We talk about homeless folks once in a while here in this episode because it's a factor on whether or not we're going to move to a city. Does that city have bear or feel some sort of responsibility to take care of their citizens who are, underserved. And so that's a big thing. We want that in a town. And naturally, it's something we noticed right away when we got to Quebec City. We were among a handful of, people, tourists or whatever. And it didn't seem like there were a ton of locals beyond the homeless folks that were there on that main stretch where we were. Mm-hmm. So I could tell right away, this is coming from Ohio and Youngstown specifically, it felt right away like, oh, this is kind of a gritty blue collar environment that's having hard times right now. And I don't think that's entirely true. I do think there's a little bit of a cosmopolis going on there, but in the old town is obviously for tourism or what have you. I dug into the stats a little bit and found out, first off, it is the capital of that province. But that province, out of all the ones in Canada, is the most heavily taxed. So, inflation has spiked there. Homelessness is a problem because they're actually having a housing crisis right now. And it felt in their small scale, so it's only 500,000 people in Quebec City.
Oh, it's really small.
It is, compared to a lot of American cities that are undergoing the same problems. But it seemed like an inordinate amount of homeless people in that area. And it turns out of that whole section of the country, Montreal is number one, but the homelessness population has doubled since 2018 in Quebec Province. So, and then obviously Quebec City being the second largest city in that province has the second most. So you went from 5,000 homeless people in that province to 10,000. And then I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that real estate prices have spiked. The one anomaly that you can find there versus other cities with a huge homelessness problem is there's a drug problem there, sure. It's not to the level that rises to a lot of American cities. And believe it or not, Quebec City is 41% safer than the national average in Canada. So you can walk around at night, as we were doing.
Yes.
Everywhere. Like, we walked everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like, we thought about it, of course. We're strangers in a strange land. Like, you tend to survey your surroundings or whatever. But looking back on it, think about it. We were walking around at night. We didn't even give it a second thought.
No, because everyone else was walking around at night.
Yeah.
So they're not giving it a second thought.
No,
when you see,
not at all.
When you see locals, and you could tell locals from tourists, I mean, they could tell us
totally
from themselves. And you see locals walking around, you do feel a sense of, I can do this too.
Yeah.
I generally, when I travel, I just try to follow what, the local people are doing. And I did that in Quebec City. So yeah, you're right. We did stay out, later than we would in some cities. And we did do a lot of walking after hours, and I didn't feel unsafe. You know what? Nobody came up and asked for money. They weren't aggressive like in some of the cities we've been to in the States where they're very aggressive. It's so unfortunate because the aggressiveness comes from so many different things. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It was definitely a bummer, to say the least, to open up the car door and see so many people with their sleeping bags. Yeah. And so, I mean, it is an issue I think that they're trying to address, though, because I did read a little bit about it since we left. Yeah,
they're starting to pour more money into the into the funds of the province dedicated just toward that situation. So, it's always a slow turnaround when something. I mean, we're talking a period of 4 years, and governments, especially state or local governments, are so monolithic in the way they move. They're so slow.
Oh, look, it took 4 years for it to happen. It's going to take 12 for them to rectify it. But speaking of taxes, okay, I think it's a really great opportunity to talk about socialized medicine and how they take care of their people there and their taxes, because we heard out of the gate going there, their taxes are high, their taxes are high. Yeah. And they are. So when you go to a restaurant, the way it's broken down is when you get your receipt, you'll see 2 different taxes. And I had to ask the waitress about it. And then I actually talked to a local and asked even more information about the tax structure and how it all works into play when you live there. Yeah. So when you eat, let's say you get a $50 meal. Okay, your bill is $50. There's 2 taxes on your receipt that you will see. There is a country run tax, which is 5%. Then there is a secondary tax for your province. Now that tax can shift from province to province. So we were in Quebec, it was, I believe, 9%. So our tax on our food was 14%, which is very high when you think about it. I know there are some cities that have a city tax of almost like Chicago, I think is at 12% their city tax. That's really, really high. And I could be wrong on that number. It could have gone down. But 14% on top of what you're already paying on every item, whether it's groceries or restaurant or glasses, whatever it is, you know, that adds up quickly.
Yeah.
And their prices aren't cheap. So their food isn't any cheaper. Their restaurants aren't any less expensive than the States. When I say that, I'm comparing it to like moderately priced cities. Okay, New York is very expensive. I'm not talking about that. It was cheaper than in New York. It was a little bit cheaper than in LA. I'm talking about moderately priced cities. It was right in line with that. So I asked somebody about their socialized medicine and how it works. And here's what I was told. Everyone is willing to pay that tax because when the time comes and they need the medicine, they're able to get it. And we're talking prescription drugs as well. But I talked to more than one person about this, and the people I spoke with said the same thing. In order to make the healthcare system in Canada work for yourself, you do have to pay out of pocket for certain things. The woman I spoke to said that she had a condition with her leg and she wanted to see a specialist, and to see that specialist would have taken 6 weeks. And she said, I just didn't want to wait. Like, I feel like it might be something serious. So I paid out of pocket. It was $150 for the visit to see the doctor, to see a specialist. She said, once I got the diagnosis, I can then determine what I wanted to do. If I needed surgery, then I can schedule the surgery with, the state-run doctors.
Yeah.
I did ask her, how are the state-run doctors? Because in the States, everybody knows that when you go to a county hospital, it's a county hospital.
It's a coin toss.
Yes, it is a coin toss. Some county hospitals have the best interns there. They're like, going to USC med school, or in Chicago, they were all like, University of Chicago med students that were at Cook County. But in every state, it's different.
No, definitely.
So I asked her, how is it going to a state-run hospital? Oh, she gave me the best information. She said, it's just like the United States, depending on the hospital you go to. She said, everyone knows what hospitals are good with what procedures. She said, some hospitals are better with, certain procedures, so you tend to go to that hospital. She said, for the system to work well, you just have to pay out of pocket once in a while. She said, it's just the nature of the game. You have to pay out of pocket.
Because you need to see somebody before 6 weeks.
Yes.
Right?
She did say also, same with prescription drugs. Sometimes you have to pay out of pocket. The state-run program will get you prescription drugs, fraction of the cost, $5. And sometimes it may cost you $100 for a prescription. But if you don't want to wait and have, it could be a couple days maybe, you just pay out of pocket. Then I asked her about education, because it's just like the States. I did think, though, that when you're paying a higher tax, you would get a better education. No, that was so disappointing. So what she told me, it was just like the States. This is a woman born and raised in Canada, but very familiar with our way of life here.
Yeah.
She said that if you're wealthy, you tend to send your kids to the private schools. And she said, and I asked her how much the private schools were, thinking, if you're paying 14% in taxes, the private schools are probably $10,000, $12,000. Nope, 25 to 30 for high school, middle school, and elementary. So that was really disappointing, because I did think, how are young people, because you see young adults everywhere working, hustling.
Yeah, totally.
At 14% tax, your income, you're not making a six-figure income if you're 23 years old. Like, for instance, I got my hair cut when I was there. And the girl that cut my hair was a young girl. She charged $75 for my haircut. I paid the 14% tax, but she's also paying 14% tax on everything.
Right.
And I just was sitting there thinking, how is this girl doing it? But nobody complains. Did you hear anyone complaining in conversations, anything when you ask people about living there? And also the same with Montreal. Everyone seemed really happy. So I think it's working, even though we're so used to a different way.
Well, I think the bad news is you're paying higher taxes, and there are longer wait times because you're in a public system. And like you said, maybe you have to pick and choose where you're going and wait a longer period of time to get to the doctor who specializes in whatever your affliction. But I think the better news is that if you get sick, you're not going to lose your house or your business.
Agreed.
So there's that. And I probably would not complain within a system like that either. And I think a lot of Canadians, unlike, I think, in America, it's all about sort of self-sufficiency or, individual accomplishment, where I think in Canada, they're just all up there. And they've like there's a bigger sense of community and sort of, an emphasis on how public services actually should,
work for
help the public. Yeah.
And I did think about this young girl. I thought, you know what? She doesn't have to pay health insurance. She probably doesn't have a car because you can walk everywhere in Quebec City. Yeah. So really, what does she have to worry about? Honestly, just her groceries, her electricity, and her rent. And when we looked at the rents there, the rents were comparable to the States. It wasn't like completely outrageous.
Yeah, it was
like a one bedroom was what, like $1,200 or something like that. So I'm all for it. I mean, I've had this argument before. People are like, oh, you're just a socialist. I'm like, no, I just believe in healthcare for everyone and education for everyone. Like, that's what I'm a believer in.
Yeah. I would not define you as a socialist by any means. So
I just don't want you, I just don't want you to perish because you can't afford a good cancer specialist, and then your kids get kicked out of the house because no one can afford the mortgage.
I have a really dumb question.
Yeah.
What kind of dollars do they take over there?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. It was Canadian dollars. It wasn't euros. We had, anytime I paid in dollars, they would give me Canadian dollars back.
Yeah. So you can pay in American dollars there, but
they're not
for the
most part
we use our credit cards or whatever, and then there would be some sort of exchange fee on top of that.
I wonder, what is the Canadian dollar called? Is it just the Canadian dollar?
Yeah, it's Canadian dollar.
I mean, there's not a name to it because it wasn't the euro.
It's the dollar.
Yeah. So I would pay with American dollars, Phil, and then they would give me Canadian cash back.
Yeah.
And the Canadian dollar was actually, at the time, our dollar rate was not good. Like, I think it was American dollar was.
It was like 1 to 1.4, right? Something like that.
So the current Canadian dollar equals 73 cents in U.S.
Yeah.
So $1 in Canadian is 73 cents in U.S.
So converting it, then, it was not.
Let's not do math, hon. Your high school math department. Come on. Like, really, you're going to put them on spot? You're going to put them on blast again? We've been over this.
So let's do this. Okay. So our dollar did not go very far there.
No, well, I mean, we were paying a lot more taxes than we're accustomed to paying on just a simple purchase.
But also the conversion rate. I remember being there going, oh, this isn't great.
Yeah. So we talked about the syrup a little bit. One point of fact is that Quebec produces 70%. I'm sorry, Canada produces 70% of the world's maple syrup.
As it should, because it's the most delicious syrup anywhere. And I've tasted syrup a lot of places.
There are people in Vermont that are going to take.
Yeah.
In America, most of our maple syrup comes from Vermont. But anyway, 70% of the world's syrup comes from Canada. 90% of that syrup comes from the Quebec province. So
wow.
Yeah, it's a big deal there.
I wonder why. I wonder if they have just more maple trees.
Yeah, and I know I'm just, for the sake of the podcast, I know I'm using Quebec and Quebec interchangeably. I've said it one way for 40 years, and now I'm trying to say it the way it's supposed to be said. But in addition to that, Quebec City is credited as being the home of poutine.
Yeah,
Did you try the poutine while you were there?
I feel like I have to lie and say I did, because how could I go there and not do it? But I didn't, because I'm not a gravy.
I didn't either.
I'm not a gravy on French fries person. I just don't understand it.
I am, but the one day where I was all geared up and ready to try it was Labor Day in Montreal, and all the shops, all the restaurants were closed. So I didn't even try it in Quebec City. I was available for breakfasts and dinners every day, and just to me, poutine seemed more like a lunch food. So I never dipped into it either.
I don't know. My defense, I asked plenty of people in both Montreal and Quebec City to recommend a poutine place.
Yeah.
I never got a straight answer. Not a single time did I asked 3 people and I never got a straight answer. One person said the fast food restaurants have the best. Another person asked me, like, what kind of gravy do you like? Because it all depends on the kind of, do you like a sweet gravy? I don't know, salty. It was too many questions.
There's too many gravy questions.
I was like, just tell me, how hard is this? If you ask me for a good burger place in the States, I will tell you where to go. How is it so hard to tell me to go to where to find poutine? So I just said, forget it. I wasn't that invested in it to like sort through all the like disclaimers about this poutine place, or I couldn't get a straight answer.
Well,
basically.
hopefully we have some listeners who can actually recommend a good place for us when we go back to Montreal next summer, even though it's not Quebec City where it was originated. But I didn't try it either. I feel like we should list the ingredients for the listeners.
Oh.
And that is French fries or fried potato, it's French fries, right?
It's French fries.
French fries with gravy and cheese curds. And I got to tell you, I love bar food, but for whatever reason, that whole combination didn't really turn me on enough to where I had to go get it while I was there.
That's a no for me, dog.
Cheese curds, you're out on cheese curds?
That sounds so random.
It is.
Yeah.
Everybody swears by it. Canadians swear by it. So anyway.
I know, it's kind of like going to Chicago and not having pizza, which was why I was really vacillating while we were starting this podcast as to whether or not I should lie.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me to lie. So I didn't have it. All right. So do we have anything else to cover about Quebec City?
No, I think we're good with Quebec City. Yeah.
Would you go back?
I would go back for sure. I think we've painted the picture that it's nowhere that we would choose to live. I would much sooner go to Vancouver or Montreal. I'd rather have the city life, I think.
It's funny because you go back and forth on whether or not you want to live in a city.
I do.
Yeah. Quebec City was lovely. I just agree with you that Montreal just seemed, it was like, for me, a little cleaner and a little more cosmopolitan. I like looking at pretty people. I know it sounds so crazy, but just to see what they're wearing and how they the hats they have on, for me, Montreal was more of a feast for the eyes.
Yeah, more vibrant.
Yes, and that's what I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it does seem like there are a lot of folks in the Quebec City area that, are getting by or
I know, that's
struggling a little bit, maybe.
That
was the vibe in the air that I got while we were there.
And that was just one part of Quebec City we were in.
Yeah.
So that is something that, definitely we have to share, that we were only in this one area for the 3 days. And there are many areas of Quebec City we did not venture into because of time constraints. So I do wonder if we went back, how our thoughts would be when we stayed in a different area. I mean, St. Roch is the new up and coming hip area. And whenever you get a new up and coming, you're going to get a segment of that area that is, on the rise. So what does on the rise mean? That they've maybe had some struggles. Yeah.
That said, if you're in Montreal and you have a couple extra days and you can do the drive up to Quebec City, I highly recommend it. Seeing the fortress, seeing the old city it's spectacular. It really is. It's worth the price of admission.
Agreed.
Okay, so that's going to do it for this week. Special thanks to Phil, who joined us today. We love your questions and your interaction, Phil. Adds a new dimension to the show. Looking forward to more of that in the future.
Oh, yeah, it's fun.
Nothing to say, Phil?
I'm thinking of American poutine. I'm sorry, this has been on my mind this whole time. I need KFC gravy, McDonald's French fries, and Culver's cheese curds. That is probably the ultimate American poutine.
All right.
I'll leave you with that.
That is a great way to leave the show.
Absolutely. So why don't you mix all those together and report back next week on how that turned out for you.
Got it.
All right, so that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for joining us. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate it. It helps out the show a tremendous amount. We will see you guys next week. Take them out.
Empty nest, full tank.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.